this is Marita from Ruby Soup with Pearl Juice, and in this video I'm gonna do a little bit of a channel update as well as talk about some future videos, as well as kind of doing a little bit of a reaction to the Bailey's Women's Prize for Fiction that was just announced 2 days ago. So the thing is that I am still reading Our Weddings by Dorit Rabinowan, and I am almost finished with it, and I adore it. There's going to be a review of that book coming up next week. And I also thought that some of the books on this year's Bailey's Women's Prize were interesting. There are specifically 3 books on the long list that I am dying to read. And I kind of thought that this would be a good opportunity to say that I am actually going to now prioritize reading these 3 books. And I'm going to try and have a individual review for all of these books in the following 3 months. So the first book that I plan on reading that was from the long list is actually an author who is new to me. I hadn't heard of her before until just a week ago. And the book is Psyched by Jessie Greengrass. So this book is about a daughter, a mother, and a grandmother. And they all grapple with identity and with the question of motherhood and how that relates to their womanhood. And they're like talking about like what it means to want to have a child, but also what it means not to want to have a child, and kind of like weighing the pros and cons of both decisions and the consequences of these decisions. And it sounds like super interesting. It sounds like it's really like diving into these kinds of like gender politics questions, but it's also doing it in a very experimental, very wild way. And experimental fiction is like really rare, and it really is kind of like a gem, especially if the author is able to do it really well. Then it's always like really kind of such a treasure to find fiction that really is kind of like taking unorthodox writing styles while also telling a compelling story. So that's going to be super interesting to get into. And the second book that I want to read is When I Hit You, or A Portrait of the Writer as a Young Wife. And this book is written by Meena Kandasamu. Meena Kandasamu is an Indian author. She has also written the book The Gypsy Goddess. And this book, When I Hit You, it kind of like got a really good review in The Guardian last year. And Ayobami Adebayo, who wrote Stay With Me, she mentioned it as one of her favorite reads from last year. But despite this book didn't really get a lot of buzz. So I was really happy to see it on the long list, because I think now it's going to pick up more steam and it's going to probably be talked a lot more about. The book is actually about a woman who experiences domestic abuse, and a little bit like Sight, it is kind of like written in a experimental form. What I could tell from the Guardian review, it's kind of like written in verse. So that's going to be really interesting. Domestic abuse is kind of like one of these subjects that is like very much talked about in when it comes to like opinion pieces and newspapers and such. But fiction very rarely actually dwells into the subject and deals with it head first. And I think it's like really interesting to read a book that tackles this subject and kind of like has it as the main thing in the novel. I'm also really happy that it's a Indian author who has written a book that is based in India, so there's Own Voices presentation there, so that's going to be really interesting. And then the third book that I want to read is Elmet by Fiona Mosley. This is a debut novel that has been categorized as working class fiction, and it's about a family, a sister and a brother, and they live with a guy who they call Daddy. And they're kind of more of a lower class family, and I adore literature that depicts working class life or working class families. I always find those stories to be very rich, and they often have like such great social commentary. So I'm always here for that. And I've also read like from Literary Hub that Elmet kind of discusses toxic masculinity and violence, and how masculinity and violence relate to each other, and how that's kind of constructed and in our society. And the book kind of deconstructs these ideas that we have about masculinity and violence. And I find the topic of masculinity as well as toxic masculinity to be not only really topical, but a very important topic to discuss, especially in literature. I think literature is really a fantastic way how to explore those concepts, because you can really dwell into the psychology of the characters and really kind of discuss it in very frank and honest ways. So, those are my future plans. Do you guys follow the Bailey's Women's Prize for Fiction? I would love to hear your thoughts on all of this. If you like this video, click the like button, subscribe, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye!